Hello, techers around the world. My name is Ralph Amos. I'm the president and CEO of the Caltech Alumni Association and assistant vice president of alumni relations at Caltech. And we have the honor this evening for a conversation with Dr. Sudhir Jain. Before we introduce Sudhir and bring on our moderator, Sandra Singh Low, let me tell you a little bit about the Caltech Distinguished Alumni Award. The award itself is the highest honor the Institute bestows upon a graduate, and it is given in recognition of a particular achievement of noteworthy value, a series of such achievements, or a career of noteworthy accomplishment. And that today is indeed Dr. Sudhir Jain. Today, Dr. Jain is Vice Chancellor of Banaras Hindu University in India. He is recognized for his life-saving impact as India's preeminent earthquake engineer, for his research, advocacy, and establishment of training programs for engineers and of seismic building codes, and for his leadership in higher education, first at the Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar, and today at Banaras Hindu University. So without further ado, I turned over the Zoom to our DAA recipient, Sandra Singh Low, and she in turn will connect with Dr. Jain. Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Ralph. Thanks so much for that lovely intro. It's exciting to be here tonight talking to Dr. Jain, who is, hello, Dr. Jain. I see you. You are, I'm possibly muted. Can you ask to unmute? Can you, you're waving. There you are. Hello. So you're in India right now. Yes. Where in India? Can you tell us?
Yes, I'm in India right now.
Okay. And in what city? What?
Varanasi, Banaras, Varanasi. Yeah.
And what time? It's 6:03 here. What time is it in India?
6:33 in the morning.
That's always a fantastic thing, the half-hour difference in India. We love it. Well, thank you for joining us very much today. And so what's gonna happen for you who are watching, just a bit of housekeeping. We're gonna run, in a moment, we're gonna run a pre-taped interview we did recently, right here together. Dr. Jain and I were in the same room at the Caltech Alumni House where we're broadcasting from right now. And that will run until about 6:40. I was gonna say 40 minutes past the hour, but of course in India, it's gonna be, you do the math. Okay. And then after that, Dr. Jain will reappear live and take your questions in real time. So some of you have already submitted your great questions, and we thank you for that. If questions occur to you when you're listening to Dr. Jain's very, very interesting interview, just use the chat feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And then we'll collect those as we go. And include your affiliation with Caltech if you would like. It's not necessary, but if you would like. And I should also mention that today's conversation will be recorded and made available online following the event. So, are you ready, Dr. Jain, for us to jump in and roll this tape and see what you talked about?
Absolutely. Looking forward. Yeah.
Fantastic. So Dr. Jain and I are going to take ourselves off screen. See you in 30 minutes from now. Okay. Welcome, Dr. Jain. Sudhir, if I can call you that, and congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you for joining us at the Caltech Alumni House today. So, as a distinguished alumnus, we'll be here to talk about your current achievements, such as not just as India's leading earthquake engineer, but in leading the Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar, if I've said that correctly, to such prominence. But I wonder if we can begin with the latter thread of education. And if you could share a little bit about growing up in India, your schooling there, what it was like, and when you became interested in science.
So I grew up in lots of small towns in northern India. In those days, the options for a middle-class young boy was to either become a doctor or an engineer in India. And I chose to go to the engineering line. There was a competitive process through which you get to go to engineering colleges, and I appeared in those colleges, and I ended up studying at Roorkee, which was one of the oldest, is the oldest engineering college in India. So that's what led me to engineering, not because I was in love with science, but because that was the thing that young kids did. In fact, just before I went to Roorkee, I knew that I wanted to do structural engineering professorship at Roorkee as my long-term goal. When I went to Roorkee, I was 16 years old. And if anybody asked me at that time, what is your life's mission? It was to teach structural engineering at Roorkee. That's the way it was.
And what was it? Was it the career path or fascination with the topic, or?
So there was a professor at Roorkee whose last name was same as mine, not a relative, Professor O.P. Jain. And I had heard from my father, from my uncles, from family friends about how great he was. And I happened to meet him at the time when I was looking for options. My father took me to him in Roorkee. And when I met him, I just realized that he's the role model. I would like to be like him, teaching structural engineering at Roorkee.
Fantastic. Okay, so now what brought you to Caltech? What drew you to Caltech in 1979 for graduate work, the same year that I came in?
Yes.
So we were here at the same time.
Yes. What a coincidence.
And we were just reminiscing about Burger Continental.
Yes.
So anyway, so what drew you, aside from Burger Continental, what drew you?
I had no clue about Burger Continental at the time. So here I was, undergraduate student at Roorkee,
Right.
wanting to become a professor, for which you needed to do PhD. So I needed to do PhD.
Yes.
And I went to Professor Jain, who by the time had moved to IIT Delhi as its director. So I went to his house one day when I was in my fourth year, senior year, as you would say it. And I said, I want to do PhD. And I understand that one should strive to go to a good American school. What is your recommendation? And he said, I suggest if you can get admission in Caltech, Berkeley, MIT, Urbana-Champaign, 3-4 schools, he said. By all means, go, although it will be very difficult. Odds are not in your favor. But if it doesn't happen, come to IIT Delhi as a master's student, study masters, and then I will try to see if I can recommend you to some good school for PhD. So I went back to Roorkee. I got the application forms from 4 schools. All 3 of them, other than Caltech, were asking $25 and $30 application fee. And I had not done what is called GRE and TOEFL, and I was not prepared really. So I said my chances of getting admission with no TOEFL, with no GRE scores are pretty slim. So I just went to apply Caltech because Caltech didn't ask for any fee. And
that's an inspiring story. We'll edit this one out. No application fee.
So that's how I applied to Caltech. And I was very pleasantly surprised when I received a letter from Caltech giving me admission, giving me financial aid, and having the visa documents. And that is how I ended up at Caltech in 1979.
So, and what was your experience of Caltech like coming to how did the campus strike you at that particular time? Was it very different from India? I would imagine. What were your?
So, I would say the United States was very different from India, and therefore Caltech being different from Roorkee was no brainer.
Right.
It was understood. It was taken for granted.
Right.
I would say first few months were a bit lonely, were a bit confusing, but very soon I just fell in love with Caltech, with the environment here, with the ecosystem that Caltech provided, and I became quite comfortable after a bit of adjustment period.
What do you mean by the ecosystem? Can you describe that a little bit?
See, what I found at Caltech was that there were no power games of any kind. People were very comfortable. People were very genuine. They were very authentic. Whether it was a student you are dealing with, whether it was a teacher you are dealing with, whether it was a non-teaching staff, the secretaries and technicians you are dealing with. In fact, I fondly say that even if you dealt with any vendors in Caltech and around Caltech, the shops, people are generally chilled, generally comfortable. And I think that is something that I started to enjoy and like very much.
Well, I think you've also talked about Caltech professors exuding a sense of security.
Yes.
What
yes.
can you talk about what you mean by that?
See, in earthquake engineering, understood that we will be taken care of if we are doing our job well. We did not have insecurities, whether you work with Professor X or Professor Y or Professor Z.
Right.
You didn't have to worry that there may be 2 slots for scholarship or fellowship or assistantship, and there were 4 candidates. I saw student going to Professor X and after a year or 2 moving to Professor Y without any hassles whatsoever.
Right.
I saw a student being supported of Professor X's grant, but doing a PhD with Professor Y.
Right.
So the whole atmosphere was of tremendous collegiality, of tremendous mutual respect and mutual trust. And I think that was one of the biggest learning that I had at Caltech, to be able to trust your colleagues, to be able to share your resources, and to not keep thinking about what is in it for me.
Right.
That is what something I experienced firsthand
Right.
at Caltech. The trust that Caltech had in its student body, in its entire community. You know, we used to have a master key for South Campus and another master key for the North Campus, if you remember that.
Yes, I totally do.
You could
On the
open-
honor system. Honor
You
code.
could open any door,
Yep.
and the honor code booklet said that opening anybody's office is not an offense, but abusing it or misusing it is an
Right.
offense.
Right.
And I remember I was in the middle of the night trying to crack a homework assignment, and I came across a reference in Applied Mechanics Review or some journal. And I think at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the night, I opened the library of the aerospace department using the master key. I went to the shelf. I found a volume which was like 1920s, or somebody had worked on a similar problem. I checked it out. There was a system by which you can check out a book to yourself. I checked it out, put the card on the desk, switched off the lights, closed the door, came to my office, studied that article, and wrote my assignment. So I think that kind of empowerment, that kind of a trust on students, I think that was very enriching. That was very transformative.
So then you returned to India, and what drew you to working on earthquakes? And I wonder if you have any memories of some earthquakes that occurred in India, because they can be quite massive. We have them in California, but they're quite massive there.
So my first experience as an earthquake engineering student was right here in California. I had joined here at Caltech on 19 September 1979. And within 6 or 7 days, there was an earthquake in El Centro. If I remember the date correctly, it was like 25th September or something like that. Maybe it's slightly off by then. And Professor Ron Scott came to the class and he said, if anybody wants to go to El Centro, I have a graduate student who is going there, driving there. And I volunteered to go there. And I was only a week or 10 days old in the university, in the institute. And I was able to go there and see what was the effects of an earthquake. And that was a good, insightful experience.
Did anything surprise you, or what?
It was the first thing that I was seeing. There was a famous El Centro building that had severely been damaged in the earthquake. That became a case study for many studies later. So you could see a multi-story building going through a serious damage, and that was quite impactful. Over the 4 years at Caltech, I had, of course, no doubt in my mind that I wanted to go back to India and teach at Roorkee. But being a structural engineer by practice or a mindset, I was always uncertain about things. So I sent in my application to many institutions in India. By the time I went to India, I had offers from multiple places, including at Roorkee. So I went to Roorkee and I said to my head of the department that here I am reporting for duty. And by the way, would you give me 1 month leave so that I can go to other places in India, get a sense of India, Indian academia, Indian institutions, and visit the places that I'm leaving out in favor of joining Roorkee.
Right.
And he said, instead of doing that after joining, why don't you do it first and then come back and join me? And that is how then I went to several places, and I just liked IIT Kanpur enough that I ended up joining at Kanpur rather than going back to Roorkee to join. And that is how I ended up at Kanpur.
So in your time working on earthquakes and in structural engineering, can you just give a thumbnail of the changes that have occurred from when you started working on these issues to where we are now and what you saw?
So when I went to Kanpur in 1984 and I started to teach earthquake engineering, I found that there was a huge gap between what the state of the knowledge, state of the practice was about earthquake design, earthquake analysis versus what was there in India. And I started to get drawn towards working on what should Indian practice be, what should Indian codes be. And in 88, there was an earthquake in India in a state called Bihar. And I went there with two of my students and just went around seeing what the earthquake has done. And when I came back, I was a bit more determined that that is what my calling was, that I wanted to work towards making India a safer place for earthquakes. So I kind of, over the period, became some sort of an earthquake safety activist, where I would say, what is it that is within my means to do? What is it that I can reasonably do in order to make people safe against earthquakes? And if that required writing a code, if that required teaching professional engineers, if that required creating an information center and distributing information, whatever it required, I started to do that.
And some things were simple to change and some things were not so simple to change?
Absolutely. Some things haven't still changed.
So what things should change and haven't changed yet?
One thing that has not changed is that India still does not have a competence-based licensing of structural engineers.
Oh, wow.
So for somebody in California, it's a very big deal. But
Right.
in India, people still haven't accepted that structural engineers need to be licensed based on competence rather than based on degrees and certificates that they have.
And what has changed?
We have now much better codes. We have a lot more engineers who are competent, who can design. We have a lot more awareness. In good old days, people didn't think that it was even required to design the building for earthquakes. So designing for earthquakes wasn't considered something that is needed or necessary. And even if it was, people didn't fully understand how to do it. Even if they were to try to follow the code, they wouldn't fully understand it. So I think the level of awareness is much more, the level of competence is much more, and the level of compliance is much better. I think we are building today much safer buildings than we did 25 years back.
And I mean, this notion of outreach, I know that you're very passionate about outreach, and also sort of engineers that deal with the community as well. And so I wonder if you can talk a little bit about I'm going to get that about, and I think was it around 2009 that you began working on this new kind of institution? And can you talk about your vision of making, because it is very multidisciplinary and liberal arts are emphasized and project-based learning. Can you talk a little bit about your inspiration for doing that for engineers?
As I said, I had become an earthquake safety activist. And the government of India decided to set up some new IITs. For those who are not familiar with India, India has had 5 original Indian institutes of technology, which became extremely well known for their quality of education and research. And they added a couple of more. In 2009, they announced 8 new IITs. And I had the difficult choice to make whether I wanted to be part of one of those IITs to lead it. And it was very clear to me that if I were to do that, I would have to leave earthquake safety work behind. I understood that I can't do both, build a new institution of the kind that I envisaged and also continue to work.
Right.
So I took a position that out of the 8 IITs, if I was given an opportunity to work at this particular new place where I found the ecosystem, the society, the state government were very friendly, then I would be willing to leave earthquake safety work. So with that choice, I went ahead, and when it was made an offer to me, I joined IIT Gandhinagar in 2009. The plan was, the desire was to give India a very high quality academic institution. The idea was that if I were to do work as an individual, I can inspire X number of people.
Right.
I can impact X number of people. But if I can create an institution, perhaps it will be 1000x or 10,000x. So I understood that the impact can be much, much more if we can create a really high quality institution. And that is motivation for which I went in 2009. I understood that I may have to take some unconventional ways of doing things, because I believe that if everybody is doing certain things in certain manner, by doing those things slightly better or somewhat better, you can only get somewhat better results. But
Right.
if you want something significantly different, you have to do something totally different.
Right.
And that is how I ended up in 2009 at IIT Gandhinagar. When I went there were 90 students, 90.
Oh, wow.
The first batch of students, the
Yes.
freshmen were going
Yes.
into the sophomore year. And there were maybe half a dozen teachers. And that is about it. We were in a rented space. We didn't have the land. We didn't have the buildings.
Wow.
We practically had very little laboratories. That is where I started from. We built the campus. We acquired the land. We built the campus, engaged the architects, designed the buildings, built the campus. We recruited faculty. We recruited staff. We built the whole administrative systems. And we took it to, when I left IIT Gandhinagar, it was around 1,800 students.
Wow.
So we were, of course, very cautious that we wanted quality over quantity. We had options of going much larger in numbers, but we chose to go at a speed with which we could maintain the quality. Now, with this, the idea was to define IIT Gandhinagar. And we decided that we will be a very student-centric institution. Our first priority will be students, and everything else will be after that. Second thing we said was we will work for research that has an impact rather than research that is for credentials.
Right.
Right? So
Right.
in some of my speeches, I have said that when you publish in a good journal, it means you are capable. But whether that research is having an impact or not is another question. I have often felt that for a young PhD student or young assistant professor, perhaps it is quite okay to publish for credentials. But when you grow senior, it's impact that one should measure. So we said we want to build a university where people will be respected for the impact that their research is making. And third thing that we said was that we would be very conscious of the societal obligations, the poverty, the difficulties that the underprivileged have. And we will, as an institution, show exemplary sensitivities towards those issues so that the graduates that we produce will be sensitive. I have often said that when we work with the neighboring village, when we work with underprivileged communities as an institution, we might be impacting some lives. But that's not what is the main product. The main product is that our students who are graduating, they are watching us doing the right things. And when they go into professions, when they go into their careers, they would be very sensitive. And therefore, the impact that they will make to society will be much, much larger than what we as an institution are able to do to our neighborhoods. So these were the three things that we decided to work on. Now, once you put these three things in place, a lot of issues start to get resolved automatically. For example, typically in academic promotions, you would say, I have guided so many PhDs and I have published so many papers. Now, if you say students first, you would say, all right, you have guided so many PhDs. Tell me where your PhD students are. What are they doing? How successful they are? So now you're still measuring the mentoring of PhD students as a parameter, but you're now putting focus on the student rather than on the teacher.
Right. And I wonder if, in dealing, for instance, with neighboring villages, if we talk about at Caltech in America of the public and what they understand about science and how sometimes it's challenging for scientists to talk to the general public. And is there, what emphasis do you put on communication at your institute with the students?
We didn't go in that direction where we would say we are here to communicate science to the common people, but we went in a slightly different direction. We created a center called Center for Creative Learning, where we said, how can we teach science and math to the school kids in a very interesting way? Because we in India have been complaining that a lot of our schools lead to rote learning, where students are just drilled into solving science problems without fully understanding their impact.
Right.
So we created a very, very successful program at IIT Gandhinagar on how to engage with school children, how to engage with school teachers, how to engage with schools, and teach science and math in an interesting way, maybe making small toys, maybe using some of the day-to-day things that are around you, the stuff like straw or ice cream spoon, things like that, rubber bands, and things like that.
Right.
And just have fun where science can become fun. So we did go in that direction. Our effort was that the institute should do anything where there is an opportunity that arises for the three goals that I laid out. And whenever we saw that opportunity, we actually seized it. One of the opportunity that we had was that we were a very small school. We didn't have the entrenched mindset of the faculty,
Right.
which is normally a challenge in making significant changes in the direction of any college and university. So we said, can we have the self-confidence to say any student of any subject have a supervisor of any subject?
Wow.
What that means is that I'm a student of electrical engineering and I'm fascinated by this professor of mechanical engineering, and that mechanical engineering professor will be my PhD guide, soul guide, right? Can we say that I can be a teacher of any subject and I can teach any subject, other subject, and I'll be held accountable for the output, which means I'm a teacher of civil engineering, but I can teach mathematics or English or whatever fancies me, but I will be held accountable for my consequences of what I'm doing, right? So we went through a system where we said, can we give total freedom and flexibility to the people in intellectual space and let them be, let them do things.
Interesting.
And not put them in silos of you're an electrical engineer, you're a biologist, you're a humanities. That evolves. That worked very well. The other thing that we were very successful in is to trust the students, empower them, enable them. So we engaged the students very effectively, and we said to the students that we trust you as young adults, and we will let you be, and we will let you also be responsible for the consequences of your actions.
Mm-hmm.
Which means if you don't come to study in the class, we would not reprimand you for not coming to class. But if you fail, you fail. And if you fail enough courses and you have to leave the institute, so be it. And it worked extremely well. We said there are these red lines that you should not cross. If you cross those red lines, there will be consequences.
Right.
But within those red lines, you can do whatever fancies you.
Right.
We were able to create a very, very engaged student community. And I will give two instances of how successful that experiment has been. One, that for last 2 years, more than 50% alumni of IIT Gandhinagar have made a financial contribution to the institute. 50%.
That is extraordinary.
That's extraordinary.
That's extraordinary.
Right. So that is one. Second, during the COVID crisis, almost all universities in India had asked their students to go home and vacate the hostels. We were the rare institution that said, you are an adult, we have promised you, we treat you as an adult. And we are a residential campus. In our campus, the teachers live, the faculty lives, the staff lives, the students live. So if you're not asking faculty to vacate their apartments, we are not asking you to vacate your hostels.
Right.
So at the peak of the lockdown and crisis, there were 35-40% of the students staying in the hostels and managing themselves, managing the community, helping us to manage the situation as it emerged. We had a very, very engaged student body that we never regretted for having allowed students to stay in the hostel when everywhere else the colleges were asking the students to leave the hostels.
And I mean, I wonder if the way that you teach science, and these are engineers in such a holistic way, if you think that is a good global direction for many scientific institutions to go the way that you have. And I'm not saying, would you give advice to Caltech about what Caltech could do, or did some of your Caltech experience lay the groundwork for your institute?
As I said, I learned at Caltech to trust people.
Trust, yes.
And George Hausner, who was my mentor and my teacher, and I used to go and see him every time I would come to Pasadena, even after he no longer was coming to the Thomas Lab. I would go to his house or wherever. And he would often say that we older people underestimate younger generation. And I have said that so many times in my addresses to the teachers and the students, that we older people underestimate the younger generation. If you can trust them more, they will be far more capable than what you think they are. And I have seen it at IIT Gandhinagar when I started in 2009. It was very hard to find accomplished senior colleagues to join me as a faculty. Why would somebody join me as a faculty if he or she is doing well as an academic elsewhere? I don't have a campus, I don't have laboratories, I don't have a residential apartments that other people have, and so on and so forth. Rather than taking somebody who is unhappy at his institution and bringing him here as a professor or associate professor, you want a happy assistant professors, entry-level young men and women who have just finished their PhD, and build the institution on that. And IIT Gandhinagar, I can say with great pride that young assistant professors, they build the institution. They carry the responsibility. The entire construction, for example, young assistant professor would be the professor in charge of constructions, dealing with architects, dealing with the construction agencies. The faculty recruitment will be done by young assistant professors, and so on and so forth. So I think the learning or the experiences that I had at Caltech, they were forming some sort of a bedrock on which I was building my thought processes. And it enabled me to take IIT Gandhinagar in a direction which was somewhat unconventional, to trust the students to that extent, to trust the assistant professors, empower them to that extent, to allow interdisciplinarity, to allow anybody to do research or teaching in any subject. I think it has been very successful. But the core principle, I think, remains the same as a university, as a teaching institution.
Surely there are some older professors and academicians who still have that spark. But why, I mean, and how do you think they keep that when they do? You're very vital. And
Repeat your question.
you know, I think the idea of younger assistant professors is true. And I guess, what is it about being young at that time? Are they hungrier, or do they have more to prove? They don't have so much tenure and so many, they're not just maintaining a reputation. Are they more daring?
I would say that many times our experience comes in our way of trying a new idea. Now here I am, I have already tried that idea and it hasn't worked, or I have already seen that idea not working. So when somebody comes to me and he says, let's do this, and I'll say it doesn't work. Why I'm saying it doesn't work? Because I have seen it sometimes. I don't realize that the reason it didn't work, I don't fully understand. And this new person who is coming up to me with that
Right.
new idea
Right.
may be able to execute it actually.
Right.
So as an experienced person, we quite often are misguided by our past experiences.
Mm.
While younger people don't have those experiences, they don't realize that this cannot be done. And they are more hopeful. They may fail sometimes, but then so can the senior people be.
Yes, now you've won a Caltech Distinguished Alumni Award. You could rest on your laurels, but no, what is still exciting for you or draws you forth into the future? What are you interested in?
I had a 25-year run as a faculty member at IIT Kanpur as an earthquake safety activist, very passionately working for that. Then for about 12 and a half years, I was head of IIT Gandhinagar, which was a new school upcoming and growing. And I had an opportunity to build a new culture or a different system of governance and so on. 5 months back, I moved over to one of the largest universities, publicly funded universities in India, as its vice chancellor. This is a more than 100-year-old university.
Right.
It's a very diverse university. It has medical college. It has a huge medical college. It has fine arts. It has liberal arts. It has almost any subject that you can think about. So last 5 months, that is where I have been. And this is a totally different system, different challenges than what I had seen. As one can imagine, I have been product of small colleges. I went to Roorkee, where it was about 2,000 students at the time. I came to Caltech, which was about the same, 2,300 students. Went to Kanpur, small college, Gandhinagar. And now here I am with more than 30,000 students,
Jeez.
more than half of them staying in the campus, kind of thing. So I think next 2.5 years are going to be devoted to seeing if some of the basic principles that I worked on, whether they can be applied to a large university, and if that can make a difference to that.
Right. Trust.
Trust
That will be a journey.
is one, but I think there is much more than trust. What I feel is that as a university administrator, you are here to get the best people and empower them, enable them, trust them, and provide them the resources that are needed. Of course, resources are not unlimited, so you have to prioritize this. But within the limitations that you have, can you get the best people and let them be free to chase their dreams? And you are there as some sort of a cheerleader in some sense, providing them a little bit of support.
Well, that's very inspiring. I want to go there. Everybody
Come.
wants
You must
to
come. You must come.
there with you at the head. No, that's very inspiring. And thank you so much again
Thank you.
for talking to
Thank
us
you.
today. And
Thank you.
congratulations on
Thank
the award. And you'll see your application skyrocket.
Thank you.
After this. Thank you.
Hello, we're back. Application skyrocketing, especially if there's no application fee, I guess, as we've heard from that interview. We are bringing Dr. Jain back when he turns on his camera. And there, hello. We're back in different screens. So much to ask you, so many questions. I'd like to open, and following what comes in the future question, this is perfect. This is from Chelva Kumar, PhD 1985, kind of around the same time as you were there. Sudhir, you have continued to contribute to earthquake engineering, even as a director of IIT Gandhinagar. How do you see your contribution to earthquake engineering in the future?
Frankly, I feel a little embarrassed when somebody says that I have been contributing to earthquake safety as a director of IIT. I've done very little. I did some interesting constructions in IIT Gandhinagar that were earthquake resilient, that were meant for this. But frankly, I'm not very active in earthquake safety work. Certainly not in the current role, where I have responsibility for a much bigger university and much more complex system.
Yes, okay. And there's some interesting questions here. I guess, you know, this is a career question that often these come up in our Caltech Distinguished Alumni interviews. It's like, what is the most challenging thing you experienced in your career, and how did you overcome it?
Frankly, when somebody works with a mission of changing something, I think the biggest challenge that one faces is the skepticism of people who should come and join hands with you. They're skeptical. They don't feel that this will work. And rather than coming and providing more power to you, they sometimes can be a little bit of handicap to you. So I think that would be the only thing that I can define as a challenge, that people who should come forward for a positive mission sometimes are skeptical. Not that they don't want it, they just don't think it will work.
And in terms of earthquake policy in developing countries, a question comes, what's the biggest challenge do you think that developing countries face in establishing and enforcing earthquake safety policy?
The very big difficulty that developing countries quite often face in today's time is that they try to imitate the developed countries' earthquake safety programs. They forget that what a developed country did 50 years back or 60 years back, you haven't yet done it. And you should be really doing what they were doing 50 years back rather than imitating them what they're doing today. A good example will be that in California, for example, or many countries, New Zealand, elsewhere, they developed a good code, they enforced the code, they created systems where the local authorities would ensure that new buildings are following the codes and so on and so forth. But many developing countries haven't done that. And now when they see a developed country doing what is called microzonation or instrumentation, they get distracted. They try to imitate by spending their time and resources on microzonation or instrumentation, but they should first be really ensuring that the buildings are built to the codes, which is something that developed countries have already cracked it, already done it, and that is the first thing to be done.
Right. So, you know, also you've been president of the International Association of Earthquake Engineering, I believe, and this question is, what is your most memorable experience as the president of the International Association of Earthquake Engineering, and what did that role mean to you?
See, the Association of Earthquake Engineering is an association of the countries that have earthquake problems, that have earthquake safety concerns, and they have their own earthquake associations. And the International Association is really the association of the associations. What it meant was for me to be able to work with diverse colleagues from coming different parts of the world. I was associated with the executive committee of the International Association for a fairly long time. First as a member, as a director, later as a vice president, finally as a president. I think my best memories are of very fine friendships and associations that I could develop and learn from my colleagues from around the world.
This is another career type question for those coming on their way up. Given your successful career, what do you consider the most important skills you learned in your academic career? That's a big question, but.
Yeah. I would say that when I was studying, in fact, even as in my early years as an academic, I still was a pretty binary person, 0 or 1%, black or white person. The various shades of gray did not make sense to me, and I did not have appreciation for those grays. But then as I got older and I got some beatings here and there, I realized that world doesn't work with 0 or 1, but it works with lots of things in between. So I would say the most important lesson or most important learning, and that is what I have tried to inculcate in my students at IIT Gandhinagar, is to be a little bit more open-minded to gray areas and to decipher mixed signals and ambiguities and things like that.
That's wonderful, and I can probably imagine where you might go with this. So mentorship is something that's so important in science, and I think just hearing you talk about the younger professors, et cetera, and the students, so it was just very inspiring. But from your position as a mentor, what is your fondest memory from a mentorship standpoint? Well, I guess actually this is saying either being mentored or being a mentor or both. How do you see that? Give it fond memory.
I think I've been very similarly lucky to have fantastic mentors all my life. My most memorable episode happened when I was about 11 or 12 years old, and I had a teacher who was teaching me mathematics, and he became my lifelong mentor until he died about 10 years back. We remained in touch, and he influenced me in numerous ways at a very, very impressionable age. Imagine a 12-year-old kid coming under the influence of a teacher who remains in contact with him. I used to receive his letters when I was a student at Caltech, for example. I started from there, went to Roorkee, found some fantastic teachers and mentors, came to Caltech, had again a very good run with mentors, Professor George Hausner, Paul Jennings, Ron Scott, many others. Came back to Kanpur, again, was very, very lucky to have senior colleagues. And over the years, I started to realize that mentorship doesn't mean somebody has to be your senior. Over the years now, I find that some of my younger colleagues have started to become my mentors, to whom I go to for advice or to whom I bounce off ideas or who calm me down when I'm a little excited. I think who I am today, fairly large part of it is because I was very, very fortunate to find fantastic mentors all my life.
And sometimes, no, I think the way my kids are mentoring me in how to turn on my computer or how to work through remote. But I wonder if, some of your mentorship can be a combination of not just science advice, but is there also life advice that mentors can give?
That's right. I remember a turning point came to me when I was at IIT Kanpur. As I mentioned to you, I was an earthquake safety activist, and there was an opportunity where somebody offered me to be part of a litigation against the government for not doing enough for enforcing the codes. And it appeared to be a very tempting offer because I was getting frustrated that there was not enough effort to implement the codes. And I wrote a letter or email to Professor George Hausner saying that I'm tempted to do it. And I vividly remember, I might be able to locate that letter if I work hard enough, where he wrote back to me saying that you are better off working within the system and helping the system to improve rather than going outside the system and fighting the system. So I would say that I was very, very fortunate to have wise people who were not only good in their subject, but who had the wisdom of life, and they could keep holding my hand from time to time.
So we are a little bit running out of time. We have time for, I think, 2 more questions. One is a research question. One's a Caltech question. What is your most memorable experience as a researcher at the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT? Was there a research moment that was memorable for you?
I remember going to an earthquake in 1997 in town Jabalpur, and my concept of what makes safe building got totally changed because I saw the way the buildings had behaved. Because my education, my textbook education told me that the brick masonry infills are damaging, are not good. They're not allowed in countries like US and California, earthquake regions like California or New Zealand, and those are bad, they should not be allowed. And then here I go and I see that there are many buildings which are really doing well because of the brick masonry, and that gave me the insight that we can't just follow the solutions from other countries because materials are different, situations are different. And that was a turning point in a lot of my work and a lot of my thinking and a lot of my activism in terms of what is needed and what is good for India.
Oh, fantastic answer. And the last question it also has a PS that I'm going to add to it personally. This is a Caltech question and there's two parts. One is, what is your fondest memory of Caltech? And Sandra Tsinglo, a fellow distinguished alumni, is going to throw in the question, do you remember your favorite dish at Burger Continental?
The second question is a more obvious question. The falafels, anytime. Burger, Continental, and falafel. Absolutely. No brainer there.
Excellent.
In terms of Caltech, what was the most memorable or most pleasant experience? I would say that the fact that I could study there for 4 years and have had absolutely no unpleasant moment in 4 years, I think that is something I can go on and on. It's very rare for a young person at that age to go to a college for 4 years and come out of the college and say, in my 4 years, I haven't had an unpleasant experience from my teachers, from my colleagues, from my students, from staff. Absolutely. I think that is something I cherish a lot.
That is a fantastic answer. That and the falafel. So you not a pie and burger guy. Okay. Like that is that's really a wonderful answer. And it speaks well of the institution, this one and also of yours. Well, thank you so very much. It's been just to hear you talk is fascinating and really inspiring. And yes, and thank you for building these great universities for all to study.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Sudhir Jain, Caltech Distinguished Alumnus for 2022. So that was our interview. Some quick closing notes for you, and they're very quick and they're very fascinating. So stay on. Okay. So first of all, 3 things. One is, yes, you too can nominate a Techer for the 2023 Distinguished Alumni Award. Just go to alumni.caltech.edu. Submission period closes January 9th. So you have a little time, but don't put it off. Don't have like the holidays make you forget. On November 17th at 4 p.m., there's the Lee F. Brown Dining Hall dedication celebration. So join us at Caltech in the dedication of the Lee F. Brown Dining Hall. This will be a Caltech's central dining facility named in the fall of 2021 in honor of the late Lee Frank Brown, a former Caltech employee and lecturer who dedicated his life and career to efforts expanding students' access to STEM. Last but not least, and this is so fantastic, Mark Davis, the Caltech Alumni Association's own Mark Davis, is down in Chile, I am told, this week. I'm so jealous before they go into Argentina. Why? Because of the Techer tours. These are these fantastic tours. You might get those brochures in the mail and you can book your seat today. So let me tell you what's coming up. March 28th to April 8th, Legends of the Nile, featuring Cairo, Luxor, and Abu Simbel. Can you imagine? March 28th to April 8th. Then April 15th to 23rd, Paris, the African-American Experience. It's a different take on Paris than perhaps the conventional tour book one, and that's going to be amazing. And then finally, if you want to go far, September 24th to October 9th, the Journey to Southern Africa. So what a wide range of World War IIs, join fellow Techers, fellow alumni, and have some fun. So in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us from all over the world today. I'm Sandra Tsinglo, signing off with the Caltech motto. It is the truth shall make you free, but after talking with Dr. Jain, I want to say the truth shall make you trust. All right. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Good night.